The biggest fear for most people thinking about starting a business isn't whether they can make it work, it's whether they might lose their savings trying. And that fear is real, it's valid. You may have spent decades building what you have today, and the thought of watching it disappear just because of one bad bet, that would make anyone hesitate. Good news is there are smart ways to reduce that risk. After more than 20 years helping more than 30,000 people become business owners, I've seen some consistent patterns, strategies, ways that people can stack the odds in their favor. I'm going to walk you through 5 of them today. Number 1, test before you invest big. I have done some really smart things in my life, and I've done some really dumb ones too. And I think I've talked about this before in prior videos. The biggest one was a $400,000 mistake. This idea I had for a product I wanted to build that didn't have a customer yet. I believed in it, so much so that I took down an office space, hired a team, built out technology. It was the most expensive single lesson of my life, and it really didn't have to start that way. By contrast, when I started Guiding Financial, we used $3,500 on a credit card, a couple of laptops, and it was because we focused on finding customers first. In that process, the business evolved. What started as helping people invest in real estate using retirement funds became a company that helps people buy and start small businesses. Now, if I contrast all the ventures I've seen, the failed ones with the successful ones, the consistent difference is that the successful ones almost always start with a test. Testing helps you validate your assumptions before you go about risking your savings. Test your market, your customers, and see if there's real problems that people are willing to pay for. Now, if you haven't seen it, I've got a separate video on this idea of how to identify what to test. I'll go ahead and link to that in the description, but let's keep moving. So number 2, play where you have an edge. I think Charlie Munger said it best. Charlie Munger, of course, is Warren Buffett's longtime business partner. He said, the key to success is playing games where you have an edge. Something like that. I'm sure I butchered it a little bit, but your edge comes from what you know, who you know, maybe what you're naturally great at, anything that gives you a leg up on the average owner. In fact, my business partner once started a staffing firm that specialized in global talent. He had a really clear edge because he had already experimented and solved this problem for a business that we owned. And he also had this really incredible network of business owners, people that could be his first clients when he rolled this business out. And I always think of that example when I think of what it means to play with an edge. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to pick a room where your knowledge, your skills, your relationships give you an advantage. And if you can do that, then you can stack the odds before you even start. All right, number 3 is buy stability. If your goal is to reduce risk, one way you can do that is buy something that's proven. Now, on the spectrum of business ownership, you have startups, which are the least proven. Then you have franchises that offer somewhat of a tested model, but you still are building out a new location. And that can mean taking on marketing, hiring, maybe execution risks. On the far end of the spectrum is existing businesses. And these can give you something really powerful, right? They've got proven customers, a proven history. It's the same customer base in the same location. And if you do your homework to find a business that has a stable team, a stable customer base in a growing market, you're already more than half of the way there. And that's even better if you can find a business that's been around for a while. So I'm not sure how many of you have read any books by Nicholas Taleb, but he talks a lot about this concept of the Lindy effect, which is this idea that things that last, things like businesses or books or tools, the longer they've been around, the more likely they are to be around for a long time. So for example, if you got a business that's been around for 20 years, it's much more likely that that business is going to make it the next 20 years than just a random business off the street. And that makes sense because older businesses have already weathered economic storms. They've already dealt with industry shifts. They may have even dealt with leadership changes. They have a proven track record of being able to adapt. Now, of course, that doesn't guarantee that any particular business is going to succeed forever, but it can increase your odds dramatically. Now, of course, you still have to account for changing technology or market forces. And maybe an example of this is that a record store in the 1980s was probably an amazing idea, and then probably a terrible one in the 2000s. And maybe it's, again, an interesting one as a sort of niche opportunity. But in general, the more cycles a business has survived, the better chances it's going to keep going. Number 4, extend your runway. I've said this many times, but the most businesses don't fail because they have a bad idea. They fail because the owner runs out of money or time before they can figure it out. And that means one of the best ways to reduce your risk is to buy yourself time. You can do that by keeping your expenses low, maybe staying at your day job, building backup financing options before you actually need them. I actually think specifically of one of our clients that spent 7 years working a full-time job while building his company on the nights and weekends. That's the amount of time that it took him to really find the breakthrough for his business. He had purchased a top-level domain, .buzz.com. And what really helped him break through was when he found these relationships, these partnerships with domain registrars, especially international ones. He wasn't even thinking about that when he started. Now, if he had quit his job earlier, he wouldn't have had the financial backing to even get to that point where he made that breakthrough. The point is that when you extend your runway, you buy yourself as much time as possible to learn. That gives you the time to adjust, to get it right. Because the reality is that when your runway runs out, your options do too. Now, if you want to dig into more ideas about how to extend your runway, I actually have a framework that I've built on this. I'll go ahead and drop a link to that video and the description. And I think I also have a checklist, right? So some questions that you can ask yourself to go through and maybe uncover some ways that you're not considering today that you could possibly extend your runway further. All right, let me get to the last one though. Number 5, make sure you really want it. So I have started a number of businesses. None of them have been easy. If it were easy to start a business, everyone would be doing it. And at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to perseverance. It's people sticking with it long enough to figure it out. Now, extending your runway can help that, but you also need the inner fuel to keep going when things get hard. And I found that almost all successful business owners have strong motivations in at least one of 3 areas. And so I put this in a framework. I call this my AMP motivations framework, where A stands for ambition, M stands for mission, and P stands for pain. So ambition, that is when the pull of what could be is stronger than the comfort of what is. So something you want bad enough where you're willing to do whatever it's going to take to get it. Mission probably makes a lot of sense to most of you. It's when you care deeply about a problem or a customer. And I think Nishi has a great quote on this. He who has a why to live can bear almost any house. Just if you've got something that's driving you forward, something you're really passionate about personally, a difference you want to make in the world, that can get you through a lot of hard times. That can create perseverance when things get tough. And the last one is P, pain. And this is just when the discomfort of staying where you are becomes greater than the fear of what comes next. It's that moment you realize the cost of not changing is actually greater than the cost of changing. Now, if at least one of these isn't really strong in you, the odds of quitting are super high. My 2 cents, if you're not driven by one of these, keep looking for it. The idea that becomes a mission, the ambition, the things you want that get you to move forward, or even get to the point where you have a pain that wants you to change. I have talked to many, many clients who had to wait until they had a health scare or a layoff or something, because that was what created enough pain for them to finally say, now is the time I can go and chase my dreams. Now, I will do a future video on this framework so I can give you some deeper examples of what I mean and include some ideas about how and where you might find your motivation if you feel like it isn't strong enough for you yet. But I want to keep this list reasonably short. That is the list. 5 ways you can reduce your risk of losing your savings, protect your savings, test before you invest big, play where you have an edge, buy stability, extend your runway, and make sure you really want it. Now, of course, you can't eliminate risk entirely. That's true not just in business, but in life. But what you can do is put yourself in situations where the odds are in your favor. And I wish you the best of luck as you explore business ownership and putting the odds in your favor. And as usual, if you've got a burning question you want me to answer in one of these videos, please send me an email. You can reach me at jeremy@jeremyames.com. Even if I don't decide to do a video on it, I will definitely respond to you. I'm very grateful for the people that reach out and give feedback. So would love to hear from you. And as usual, keep going. Don't quit your daydream. Cheers.